Hello friends. I hope you all are doing good. Let's dive into the story of what if Naruto walks the shadows of craving desire. Stranger danger. Ichigo stepped into Urahara's candy shop and looked around. Kenpachi was present, along with Rukia, Urahara, and Shinji. What's this about? Ichigo questioned, referring to being summoned to the candy shop in the middle of class. We need your help, Rukia stated. What, fighting a hollow? Ichigo questioned. Not exactly, Rukia sighed. There's someone going around fighting and defeating Shinigami, wizards, even hollows, seemingly at random. Every time one is defeated, they go missing. The only reason we know anything about it is because Shinji saw him fighting Lisa and defeat her before the man, or whatever he was, blasted him and knocked him out. I caught a glimpse of the same man later on when I was looking for Byakuya, who has also gone missing. Your brother got beat? Ichigo blinked. I'm sorry. Not that I want to interrupt, but there's a bit of a problem with this, Kenpachi stated. What? Ichigo questioned. He also apparently defeated Hitsugaya, Hinamori, Shunsuke, Yukitake, Amagai, and a list of others, Kenpachi stated. He's been searching for Yamamoto, I'm guessing, and will try to kill him as well. That would not work out well for anyone, Ichigo sighed. Anything else? Nell was defeated, Shinji spoke up. She's missing? Ichigo questioned. No, Shinji sighed, shaking his head. If she was, I'd say she just went back to Hueco Mundo. I know she was defeated because I found her corpse pinned to the wall over our doorway with her own Zanpakuto. I see, Ichigo sighed. I take it we'll be hunting him down. Good guess, Urahara nodded. No one here, you included, is allowed to engage this guy alone. We have no way of knowing how strong he is. Just remember what Aizen did to us when he fought all of the wizard captains and Ichigo at once, Kenpachi stated, shivering. Us? Ichigo blinked, looking at him. You weren't even there. Okay, you then, Kenpachi shrugged. Anyway, like Urahara said, no one fights him and no one travels alone except me. I'll stick with Rukia then, Ichigo sighed. We're going to go check on Yamamoto to make sure that he's not in danger. Shinji, you and Urahara go get the rest of the wizard and as many Shinigami as you can. Tell them to search for the man, carefully. The less beaten the better. And Shinji, what does he look like? You'll know him when you see him, Shinji stated. He wears a strange cloak and an orange mask. Be careful. Lisa couldn't even land a hit. It was hard to tell from the distance I was at while they were fighting, but it definitely looked like he managed to dodge all of her attacks, and she was pissed about it. All right. Ichigo nodded. We'd better get moving. We'll have to take the Dongai, Rukia stated. I don't have a hell butterfly with me. Terrific. Ichigo sighed. All right. Let's go. Rukia nodded and they both left. Urahara and Shinji both left to collect the remaining wizard and Kenpachi left the shop to gather nearby Shinigami who were in false bodies. Ichigo looked around and sighed. He wasn't sure why, but the Dongai always depressed him. He looked over at Rukia and saw her looking around worriedly. What? Ichigo questioned. The Kotatsu should be sweeping the Dongai today, Rukia stated, but it's gone. Maybe it's just not here, Rukia stated. Maybe, Rukia agreed. Come on. We should hurry. The two began to sprint through the Dongai as fast as they could but skidded to a stop when they saw two people ahead who looked perfectly calm, aside from their evil grins. What luck, one chuckled. Just the one the boss was looking for. Yep, the other chuckled. And a new slave too, he's going to enjoy you. Both were dressed in black jumpsuits with complete masks and black chest plates that looked to be leather or something similar. Out of our way, Ichigo snapped, drawing his sword. Fancy Zanpakuto. On laughed, drawing a pair of knives with ring pommels and leaf-shaped blades that curved backward like mini scimitar blades. Let me guess, Shikai. You'll need a lot more than that. He suddenly appeared behind Ichigo, slashing at him, only for Rukia to block it with her own Zanpakuto. Ichigo charged forward and slashed at the other man who easily sidestepped the blade, then slammed a knee into Ichigo's stomach, launching him away while his Zanpakuto crashed to the ground. Pathetic, the man chuckled. Show us what you're made of, boy. Ichigo stood and charged again, throwing a punch, which the man blocked, while kicking his Shikai into the air and grabbing it, slashing at the man who extended a knife like the other man's and blocked it before kicking Ichigo away. Fine then, Ichigo growled, holding his Zanpakuto out in front of him, making Rukia and the second man stop their fight to watch. Bankai. Black spiritual energy shot up around him, leaving him holding his Bankai, and he darted forward, cutting the man he had been fighting in half instantly. Oh shit. The other man gasped, running away from Ichigo. Hakuren. Rukia, who had been preparing an attack while her opponent watched Ichigo's fight, shouted, sending a burst of cold air at him. The air froze him solid, stopping him in his tracks, and Ichigo smirked. Come on, Rukia said, running past him, we need to move. He followed, and after a time, they finally reached the Soul Society and turned toward where they could sense the head captain's spiritual power. Yamamoto was fighting. They were late. I'm going on ahead, Ichigo called as he sped past Rukia, easily outpacing her. See if you can find some captains on the way, but don't take too long. Rukia nodded, and Ichigo sprinted through the streets toward the 1st Division HQ. Just as he neared the entrance, most of the headquarters exploded in a massive fireball before it went out, leaving Yamamoto lying on the ground with a man over him, holding his sword with the blade pointed down toward Yamamoto's throat. I would send you too, but I suspect that he would have a bit of trouble finding a use for you, or a way to restrain your power. The man over him, wearing a black cloak with red clouds, spoke, more to himself than anything. So, I suppose I will just bring him the weapon. I thank you for giving me the full power, by the way. The blade, which should have burned the man into nothingness long before he could take it, looked like a worn, ancient katana with a badly scorched blade. Ichigo began to sprint forward, but before he could even get a fourth of the way, the man spun, revealing an orange mask with a spiral design around his right eye, which was the only one visible. The man pointed the sword at Ichigo, making him skid to a stop as the man stared at him, his eye having a red iris and 3 tomo-shaped marks around his pupil at even intervals. Wait your turn, Ichigo Kurosaki, the man instructed calmly. I'm almost finished. Do not be impatient. And with that, the man spun back around and drove the sword through Yamamoto's face as Yamamoto reached up toward the sword. Yamamoto instantly turned to ash and fell away while the man turned toward Ichigo, holding the sword in front of himself. Now then, the man spoke. I suppose I should thank you for sparing me the trouble of tracking you down. I should also warn you that I have quite a lot of experience fighting your kind. I killed that slutty bitch, what was it, Neliel to Odelschwenk. Not to mention that half-breed bitch Lisa Yadomaru, your greatest warrior, the man who fancied himself Gaara, the best team your pathetic military had, the boy that wanted to be an ice dragon and his girlfriend, and that brat with mini-beep syndrome that could shoot flames out of his massively oversized sword. If you think you can defeat me without the sword, feel free to try. Not while you're holding that, Ichigo stated, staring at Yamamoto's blade. Put that down, and I'll kill you. The man chuckled, and the sword suddenly began to spiral around the air, seeming to be beeped into the man's eyes before another came out, much the same way. This one, however, was a bit shorter and looked like short tsurugi with 3 jute-like prongs extending from the blade, 2 on the front and 1 on the back. That's Hinamori's, Ichigo shouted. What, do you keep the sword everyone you fight uses? Only those I can use, the man shrugged. Observe. He swung the sword and sent a gigantic fireball flying at Ichigo. Ichigo slashed it and cut it in half before the man appeared in front of him and slashed him across the chest. Ichigo leapt away, suffering only a small scratch, only to be blasted by a fireball. When the smoke cleared, the man looked around for Ichigo. He was gone, however. Damn, the man sighed. And to think, you almost got away. He turned to Ichigo, who was standing about 100 feet away, seconds from a turn. Ichigo sighed and turned around as the man drove Hinamori's sword through his stomach. Ichigo blinked in surprise and the man ripped the sword out, then stepped back. Shame, the man sighed. I thought you would be a challenge, what a shame. The man turned to walk away just before black spiritual energy flew past him along with a strong gust of wind. He stopped, sensing the change, and turned around slowly, seeing that Ichigo now had white skin with a hole through the center of his chest and black lines spider webbing out from it, and a thick black line running down through each eye, then turning in a 45-degree angle at the cheekbones. Long orange hair extended down his back and a pair of sharp horns jutted out from the sides of his head and forward. The man grinned behind his mask and turned all the way around as Ichigo watched him with his completely black eyes. The man fired a blast of fire at Ichigo experimentally, only for Ichigo to fire off a Getsuga Tensho, blasting straight through the fireball and then through the man. Ichigo roared in triumph for a moment before the Getsuga Tensho passed the man, leaving him unscathed. "Impressive," the man stated. "That would have hurt, were I someone else." Ichigo roared in rage and charged forward, slashing at the man, only for the blade to pass completely through the man. The man spun and slashed him across the back. Ichigo roared and spun, slashing at him again, only for the blade to pass through him again. Ichigo roared in rage and began rapid-firing Getsuga Tensho, succeeding only in blasting several dozen buildings around them, leveling them all. Just as the man slashed Ichigo's sword arm and grabbed him by the throat, Rukia and all of the remaining captains, with the exception of Kenpachi, arrived. "Drop him!" Rukia shouted. "Or what?" the man questioned as Ichigo began to spiral and stretch through the air. Then, Ichigo and his Bankai were gone. The captains all charged at once, but before they arrived, the man sank into the ground, disappearing. The monster and the sage Ichigo opened his eyes and looked around. He was laying in a tree with his Bankai impaled just above his head. The last thing he remembered was the man injuring his now-healed sword arm and catching him by the throat. Then nothing. Ichigo pulled his Bankai out of the ground and returned it to its Shikai form, then rolled over and dropped to the ground. The moment his feet touched the ground, someone shot out of the trees and slashed at him with a katana. He blocked it, noting the woman's gray leather armor, black clothing, and white and red cat-style mask. He jumped back and avoided a second slash, then sidestepped a third and placed the edge of his blade to her throat. "Who are you?" Ichigo questioned. "I should be asking you that given you're trespassing on our land," she stated. "I just woke up here," Ichigo stated. "I was attacked and..." He was cut off by a second one of the girl appearing behind him and attacking him. The first turned into a cloud of smoke and Ichigo spun, blocking the attack before kicking her away just as a boy in orange pants and an orange sweatshirt with black across the shoulders and down the arms, then down the zipper, and spiky blonde hair landed between them, hurling a knife at Ichigo. Ichigo deflected it and the boy narrowed his eyes at him. "Go. You go," the boy instructed. "I'll handle this." The woman nodded and left and Ichigo pointed his sword at the boy. "Don't start this," Ichigo warned. "I'm not in the mood." "And you think I am?" the boy snorted. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki and I do not appreciate people attacking my friends." "She attacked me," Ichigo stated. "My name is Ichigo and I was dragged here by the guy that killed all of my friends." "Even if that's true, attacking mine is not okay," Naruto stated. "I'll give you a choice. Leave, or I kick your ass." "Oh, I would love to see you try that," Ichigo snorted. "And boy would it be fun to see you fail. You don't get it. If I'm here, my friends could be here. I'm going to find them. If I have to go through you, so be it." Naruto grinned and cracked his knuckles, then hurled a few shuriken at him. Ichigo slashed them out of the air as Naruto created a clone of himself which turned into a massive version of the shuriken. Before he could throw it, Ichigo appeared behind him and placed his sword on Naruto's shoulder. Just then, a second Naruto appeared behind him, pressing a knife to his back. Ichigo grinned and straightened to his sword as the first Naruto disappeared. "Bankai," Ichigo muttered as his spiritual energy shot up around him and left his Bankai in his sword. Ichigo spun, slashing at Naruto, who vanished in a cloud of smoke as another with a spinning ball of blue energy in the palm of his hand dropped from a tree and charged at him. "What is that?" Ichigo questioned. "Chakra," Naruto shouted. "Just like what appeared around you when you summoned that sword. Now, beep this. Rasengan." "Getsuga Tensho," Ichigo shouted as his sword, now surrounded by his attack, met Naruto's attack and both exploded into a massive ball of smoke and dust. When it cleared, Ichigo looked behind him just as another two Narutos, these two together holding a much larger Rasengan, slammed the attack into Ichigo's chest. The explosion sent him flying away. Ichigo collapsed once he had finally stopped and pushed himself up, barely able to move from the blast. "Okay. I admit," Ichigo grinned. "That was impressive. Let's take this up a notch." He held a hand in front of his face and black spiritual energy shot out, covering his face before he ripped it away, leaving his hollow mask. "I really don't want to do this after what happened against that guy," Ichigo muttered, standing and cracking his neck. so let's make this quick. He fired a Getsuga Tensho at Naruto and Naruto didn't move. After a moment, a red sleeveless cloak with black flames at the bottom appeared on him along with an orange pigmentation around his eyes. Then, Naruto held his hand out and the Getsuga Tensho broke apart on his hand. Ichigo stared at him shocked then sprinted forward. Before he could reach Naruto, Naruto kicked him, sending him flying away. Ichigo landed on his feet just as Naruto fell from the sky with a Rasengan in each hand. Sage Art, Rasengan Barrage, Naruto shouted driving the Rasengan down at Ichigo. Ichigo leapt past Naruto, avoiding the attack then spun and blasted him with a Getsuga Tensho. The explosion blasted a massive crater in the area and sent Naruto flying before Naruto disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Ichigo spun around to see Naruto and two clones forming a Rasengan with several blades of chakra spinning around them like a big shuriken. Wind Style, Rasen Shuriken, Naruto shouted hurling the attack at Ichigo with blinding speed. Inside the explosion, billions or more tiny blades of energy and wind shredded at Ichigo's body as the concussion threw Naruto back. Finally it ended and Ichigo began to fall from the mile or so in the air the attack had carried him. His robes were shredded, his mask gone. As he fell, black spiritual energy flew off of his body and the mask reformed followed by the horns, then the rest of the body. Suddenly images were flashing in front of his eyes like a movie in fast forward. Him blasting Naruto with a Getsuga Tensho. Naruto attacking him with a Rasengan the size of a house. Himself kicking Naruto away to get enough room for a Sero. Lisa Yadomaru standing in the way of his sword, defending Naruto. Ichigo instantly froze his Bankai resting against Lisa's forehead, close enough to split a fly in half but not harming her. Then, his hollow body fell away and Ichigo took a step backward staring at Lisa in surprise. She was pale from almost dying but was otherwise unharmed. Lisa, Ichigo breathed falling to his knees in exhaustion from his fight and being a hollow. You're alive. Yes. Lisa nodded kneeling in front of him. Are you okay? Fine. Ichigo nodded. Why are you? How did you get here? No idea, Lisa stated. Come on. Me and the others will explain at the village. Naruto, this is the friend we were telling you about. Oh, Naruto nodded. Sorry about the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Ichigo growled. I almost just killed you. Actually you almost just killed Lisa, Naruto pointed out. Come on. I'll have Granny Tsunade heal you. Ichigo stood and almsod fell before Lisa caught him. Then, she followed Naruto back to his village where they would be staying until they could get home. Teamwork. Ichigo looked around the room. Naruto was there, along with Lisa, Tsunade, the leader of the village they were in along with the best healer Ichigo had ever met, and so were Hitsugaya, Hinamori, Shunsui, Yukitaki, and someone from the village named Shikaku who was apparently the best tactician in the village. So, this guy that attacked us, Madara, he has the ability to transport things cross-dimensionally and that is likely what he did to us? Ichigo questioned. Yes, Hitsugaya nodded. That's pretty much the only explanation. We've been searching for anyone that got caught but so far this is it. Do you know of anyone else? Well, Amagai got, Ichigo stated. Along with Byakuya, a bunch of hollows, apparently, and he killed Yamamoto and took his Bankai. He what? Hinamori gasped, but that's impossible. Apparently not, Ichigo growled. I tried to get there in time to help him but I was too late. If he was able to kill Yamato, you'd have been no use, Shunsui stated. I wanted to ask though, didn't Amagai die? Apparently he returned, Ichigo shrugged. Did the rest of you have your attacks pass right through the beeper? Yes, Hitsugaya nodded. I encased him in crystal and he just stepped out of it. Apparently that's pretty common for him. If he attacks, he'd have to solidify, Shikaku stated. That would have to be when you attack him. Anyway, I'm not here to catch you up. Lady Tsunade, I came to report on the sightings to the west. What's new? Tsunade questioned. Something's coming, Shikaku stated. Sighting? Ichigo questioned looking to his friends. We think they may have seen one of ours but we can't find them, Yukitaki stated. Based on what you've said, it may have been a hollow. Lady Tsunade. Another man from the village shouted running into the room. He and Shikaku both wore green vests and this new man had a blue shirt under it with the sleeves rolled up, blue pants, blue gloves with armored backs, and a forehead with a leaf carved into the forehead protector down over his left eye. He had spiky silver hair and his visible eye betrayed a massive amount of panic. "What is it?" Tsunade questioned, sensing his fear. "We're under attack," the man informed her, gasping for breath. "They're tearing us apart." Everyone instantly sprinted out of the building and saw explosion on the far side of the village, but Ichigo and his friends all recognized the feel of the energy in the explosions as spiritual energy. "Let's go." Ichigo sprinted, flying forward with his friends just behind him. Naruto and the others from the village followed on foot but quickly fell behind. In a matter of seconds, Ichigo, who had pulled away from the others, arrived in time to block two attacks from two combatants at once. One was Tier Haribel, the other was Grimmjow, and both were in their resurrection forms. "Ichigo Kurosaki," Grimmjow sneered as both Arrancar floated backward. "So you're here too, huh? If you're with these freaks, I suppose that means they're against the masked freak." "That's right," Ichigo nodded. "We could use your help, if you two feel like not killing us for a while." Just then, the other Shinigami arrived and Grimmjow grinned. "Look at that," Grimmjow laughed. "And here I thought it was just us three. All right. I'll make you a deal. You kill Haribel, and I'll join you." "What?" Haribel shrieked, wheeling around on Grimmjow. "Kill me? How dare you, you beeping coward." "No one is killing anyone except the freak with the mask," Ichigo interrupted. "And that's only after we find a way home." "There is no way home," Grimmjow snorted. "Might as well make the most of it and place myself in charge." "First off, the freak with the mask would tear you to shreds before you even took control of one village," Ichigo stated. "Second, he was only sending us here under someone else's orders." "I'll deal with him and his orders later," Grimmjow snorted, "but first." He spun, slashing at Haribel, but before he was able to make contact, Hitsugaya appeared between them, blocking his claws. "You stupid pawn," Hitsugaya growled. "This is why he left you here. He wanted you to fight us." "And he got what he wanted," Grimmjow growled as his other hand slashed Hitsugaya across the stomach. Hitsugaya's eyes widened as he fell, and Hinamori and Ichigo both shot into the air. Hinamori caught Hitsugaya while Ichigo shot past him and blocked a slash from Grimmjow, kicking him away from Haribel. "If you attack us after this, I'll beeping kill you," Ichigo growled, summoning his mask. "Let's go, Grimmjow." "Gladly," Grimmjow grinned, shooting toward Ichigo. Ichigo drew his Shikai, blocking a slash from Grimmjow as a crack ran through the blade. He kicked Grimmjow skyward and quickly entered his Bankai form, then blurred at Grimmjow. Grimmjow caught the blade, then smashed his knee into Ichigo's stomach and flipped over him, kicking him toward the ground. Ichigo flipped over and landed on his hands and feet, and Grimmjow grinned down at him until red spiritual energy began exploding out from under him. "What are you doing?" Grimmjow demanded. "Don't tell me you're digging your grave already." "You wish," Ichigo growled, rolling over with a pitch Sero in the palm of his hand. "Catch this." The Sero shot toward a shocked Grimmjow faster than anyone could keep track of. It missed Grimmjow by centimeters, but the force still blasted the left side of his torso's armor completely off and launched him skyward. "Missed," Ichigo sighed, standing. "Getsuga Tensho." He sent a massive wave of energy at Grimmjow, who flipped over and blocked it with his armored hand before vanishing. He appeared behind Haribel and drove his armored hand completely through her stomach before spinning and kicking her at Ichigo. Ichigo caught her as Lisa flew at Grimmjow. "Lisa, no!" Ichigo shouted. Grimmjow used his claw to cut his left palm, then held his hand out and charged, then fired a Gran Rei Sero. Before it could hit Lisa, Naruto appeared in front of her in Sage mode and smashed it sideways with his right forearm. It burned his arm, but aside from that he was fine. "Damn it," Grimmjow growled. "Fine. We'll finish this later, Ichigo." And with that, he turned and fled, Naruto moving to follow. "No," Ichigo called out, stopping him. "He'll be back, and when he returns, I'll kill him. Tsunade, heal her. If she's a threat, we'll deal with her, but I'd rather not say I murdered a wounded girl that couldn't fight back." "I can still fight," Haribel growled before coughing up blood. "Sure you can," Ichigo snorted, rolling his eyes. "How many were there?" "There were 15, a ninja nearby that were fighting before stated. All but 3 were killed and 1 disappeared when you arrived." "What did he look like?" Ichigo questioned. "He had messy dark blue hair, a shredded white cloak, a white cutlass with a hook in the end of a blade and a shell-shaped guard, and this weird black armor with eyes in it on his right arm, the ninja stated. Amagai, Ichigo growled. He'll be back too. How fortunate, Kakashi growled. And what happens if they happen to return when this one is trying to kill us? I won't be, Harabelle stated as Tsunade healed her. I want to get home. That means working with you. Mostly Ichigo, though. Ichigo nodded and glanced at Lisa, who was standing off to one side as if trying to hide and was holding her shoulder. You okay? Ichigo questioned. Fine, Lisa mumbled. Sorry I got in the way. It's all right, Ichigo stated. He couldn't fire them that quickly before. I think our ninja need to train if we're going to fight those guys again, Shikaku spoke up. You should probably train Naruto specifically since he will be the biggest handful. Sure, Ichigo nodded. Shunsui, Yukitaki, I'm putting you two on defense duty. You should be able to keep them busy until I get here to take one off your hands. Harabelle, you can join them once you've recovered. Hitsugaya, Hinamori, you two will teach the bulk of them to fight hollows, Arankar, and Shinigami. Lisa, you'll be sticking with me in case me and Naruto get into another disagreement. And that's why you'll be training outside the village, Kakashi stated. I'll also be accompanying you, for Naruto's sake. Ichigo nodded then turned to Naruto. Any place massive, open, and preferably with absolutely no through traffic that we can train? Ichigo questioned and Naruto nodded. He turned and left the village and Ichigo, Lisa and Kakashi all followed. As they did, Hitsugaya and Hinamori organized the remaining several hundred ninjas into groups to train. Blades Ichigo sighed, evading several more completely random attacks from Naruto, without even bothering to draw his Shikai. You were never taught how to fight, were you? Ichigo questioned. No, Naruto admitted. I brawl to make up for it. You don't do very well, Ichigo sighed. If I had my blade out and let my hollow side take partial control, he could fight you with his fists, feet, and blade without even holding the blade using the cloth attached to the end. We'll teach you how to fight barehanded later, though. For now, you'll learn to fight with a sword. Maybe two if you excel. Naruto nodded and Lisa noticed Ichigo's look and handed her Zanpakuto over to Naruto. Don't break my sword, Lisa requested and Ichigo grinned. You can fix it easily, Ichigo smirked. Now, Naruto, first off, don't look at my blade. Look me in the eyes. You'll be able to see my blade in your peripheral vision enough to block it. When you get better at fighting, you'll learn what to pay attention to in a fight. For now, just try to either evade or block all of my strikes. Okay. Naruto nodded and held the sword in front of him as Ichigo drew his own much larger blade. Do you have a smaller sword? Naruto spoke up. I think that one will snap this one. Katana are not as fragile as you think, Ichigo stated. A relatively sturdy katana can split brick, with enough force, without breaking. Zanpakuto are considerably stronger than that. Naruto nodded and Ichigo stepped forward, starting with a vertical slice. Naruto blocked it and Ichigo spun in place, slashing at Naruto's left side. Naruto blocked it and Ichigo instantly spun the other way, slashing at Naruto's other side. Naruto ducked under the blade and then blocked a stab as he stood, shoving it to the side. Ichigo stepped back holding his sword in front of himself and grinned. He's a natural, Ichigo grinned. Impulsive, fast learner, and with a natural flair for the extreme and powerful attacks. He's going to do well, with a proper blade. Naruto grinned at the praise as Ichigo readied himself, this time spinning his sword around by the cloth on the end. After a moment he swung his arms down and the blade shot forward, slashing at Naruto. Naruto barely managed to deflect the blade, then jumped over Ichigo as he tried to kick Naruto. Just as Naruto landed, Ichigo spun, pulling the sword toward Naruto a bit faster. Naruto ducked under the blade and blocked a punch from Ichigo, then spun, letting Ichigo stumble past. Ichigo flicked his wrist and the blade, now behind Naruto, shot toward him. Naruto leapt over it, the blade spinning past Ichigo, who pulled it back to himself and spun, blocking a slash from Naruto and grinning. I'm not even using half my skill, and my inner hollow can do that twice as well as me, Ichigo informed Naruto. But good job keeping up so far. I think it's safe to let him train you for a bit. Lisa, break my mask in an hour. Lisa nodded and Ichigo summoned his mask, then entered his inner world. Teach him to fight with a sword, Ichigo requested. Why should I? Zangetsu questioned. Because I'm in charge, Ichigo stated. And because he needs to learn to fight better so we can get home, where we belong. And what makes you think killing the man behind the mask will get us home? Zangetsu demanded. I don't know if it will or not, Ichigo stated. But we have to do something. Then stick to what you know, Zangetsu stated. And that's getting your ass handed to you. Ichigo gave him a blank stare and Zangetsu sighed and nodded, taking control of Ichigo's body. All right Naruto. Zangetsu spoke through Ichigo, the mask's mouth opening as he spoke. Shall we begin? I'm going to be much harder on you than him. Sink or swim kid. Naruto nodded as Zangetsu darted forward, slashing his sword one-handed at Naruto's head. Naruto barely managed to block the blade as Zangetsu brought his feet up off the ground and kicked Naruto back a few steps. Then, he dropped and slashed at Naruto's legs. Naruto jumped over the blade as Zangetsu slashed again. Naruto instinctively created a clone that pulled him out of the way as Zangetsu spun, slashing at Naruto again. Naruto blocked the blade and was sent flying, landing on his feet and sliding backward in a crouch before standing and watching Zangetsu carefully. Zangetsu grinned, holding his sword up and twirling it in his hand before hurling it into the air, catching the cloth and beginning to spin the blade like a fan. I always loved fighting with my Shikai, Zangetsu sighed happily before vanishing and reappearing behind Naruto. He swung the blade into the air then yanked it back down at Naruto faster than a blur. Naruto stepped aside from the blade and it crashed down before Zangetsu slammed his foot into Naruto's side, sending him flying. He landed on the side of a tree then dropped to the ground as Zangetsu sprinted forward and began slashing at him, now holding the sword by its grip again. The slashes almost seemed randomly chosen but were all aimed at his torso. Naruto blocked as many as he could, one managing to leave a paper cut on his shoulder and another a similar scratch on his left leg, before Zangetsu spun, the momentum behind his blade slamming into Naruto's blade and launching him. Naruto crashed down on his back then did a backward somersault onto feet and pushed himself up, readying himself again. As the dust around him began to settle, Zangetsu stepped out of it, throwing a punch at him. Naruto sidestepped the punch, noticing the cloth trailing from it and ducked as the sword flashed over his head. He stood, slashing at Zangetsu who jumped over it, spinning and yanking the blade back to himself and transitioning the added momentum to his slash. Naruto ducked under it and into Zangetsu's foot. He stumbled back again as Zangetsu tossed his sword backward and leapt forward, throwing a kick at Naruto. Naruto spun past the kick then blocked the blade, which skipped off his blade and sailed past. Then, Zangetsu spun, throwing a kick at Naruto that he dodged, accidentally placing himself between Zangetsu and the blade. Zangetsu grinned, yanking the blade back at Naruto's knee level while jumping and throwing a kick at Naruto's head. Naruto drove his sword into the ground to block Zangetsu's then jumped, balancing on the end of the pommel and throwing a kick at Zangetsu's chest to counter Zangetsu's own kick that would miss. Zangetsu grinned as the cloth from his own Shikai wrapped around Naruto's sword blade and Zangetsu caught his foot. Then, Zangetsu spun, hurling Naruto into a tree while flicking the cloth and launching Lisa's Zanpakuto after him. Zangetsu aimed perfectly and instead of killing Naruto, the blade embedded itself in the tree through the back of his jacket, effectively leaving him stuck. You're amazing. Naruto spoke, awestruck. Thank you, Zangetsu smirked. That was a nice try. No one's ever tried something like that on me. Were you any faster, you may have succeeded, but you are still too slow to fight me. What do you suggest? Naruto questioned. Train to move faster, Zangetsu shrugged before reaching up to his mask, but do it fast. And with that, he ripped it off his face. Ichigo groaned and placed a hand to his head but shook his head and straightened up looking around. Not much destruction, Ichigo noted. How'd it go? Zangetsu suggested Naruto train his speed a lot, Lisa stated. Aside from that, Naruto did exceptionally. I think he could probably fight a Shinigami if they were below lieutenant level. I see, Ichigo nodded. Excellent, next you're going to. He stopped as a massive column of flame exploded into the sky at the edge of the village. Shit, Ichigo breathed. He's here, flames of wrath. Ichigo landed on top of the wall in time to see a massive fireball explode against an even larger one, both dying out. Damn, Kakashi growled. This guy's good with fire-style jutsus. What gives? It's not jutsus, Ichigo stated. He's using his spiritual energy to create and launch fireballs from the hook in the end of his sword. Ichigo glanced at the shell-themed rapier and the black armor on the opponent's right arm and grit his teeth at the memories they brought on. Kurosaki, Amagai growled. I'll kill you this time. Good, Ichigo grinned. The moment you release that Bankai of yours, he'll be here to collect it. He may even drop off Hinamori's other blade. So that's where it went. Hinamori spoke up from off to one side. He'll come, Amagai agreed, and I'll kill him. You think so? Ichigo smirked. He has Yamato's Bankai. He killed Yamato without a scratch or burn, and yet you think you could match him? That fight, I'd pay to watch. First I'll kill you, then I'll find a way back, Amagai growled. He doesn't scare me. With that, Amagai swung his sword and sent a fireball at Ichigo. Ichigo fired a Getsuga Tensho through the fireball, canceling it as the Getsuga Tensho shot through where Amagai had been. He had thrown himself to the side immediately after attacking, so he wasn't harmed, but the Getsuga Tensho did manage to blast half of his cloak off. Damn you! Amagai snarled, holding his Zanpakuto out in front of him as flames shot up around him, the heat forcing everyone to back away. Here we go, Ichigo growled. A massive ball of fire suddenly erupted from the wall of flames and at Ichigo. He fired another Getsuga Tensho and the blast hurled him back into the wall of the village, but the fireball went out. Ichigo held his Shikai out in front of him as spiritual energy flew off of him and enveloped him. When it cleared, he was holding his Bankai and wearing his hollow mask. That's how it is, huh? Amagai growled. Fine. He switched his own Bankai to his left hand as he stepped out of the flames and extended his Bakudo's blade. Ichigo held his sword in front of him, readying himself for Amagai's attack. Amagai sprinted forward, slashing at Ichigo with the Bakudo. Ichigo jumped over it, spinning and kicking Amagai backward before darting forward and slashing at him. Amagai blocked it with his Bakudo and slashed at Ichigo with his Bankai. Ichigo turned sideways, kicking Amagai sideways before Ichigo fired a Getsuga Tensho at him. Amagai dove aside and spun, launching a fireball at Ichigo. Ichigo slashed the fireball aside, then charged forward, slashing at Amagai. Amagai blocked it with his Bankai, then slashed at Ichigo's mask with his Bakudo. Ichigo leaned his head aside, then slammed his mask into Amagai's nose. Amagai stumbled away and Ichigo darted forward, impaling him through the stomach. Amagai spun, kicking Ichigo in the face and smashing his mask while launching him away. He ripped the Bankai out and threw it to Ichigo, who was struggling to stand, one of his legs having broken when he landed. My turn, Naruto stated, appearing in front of Ichigo and picking up Ichigo's Bankai. What do I need to know? He's not overly fast, but that armor's sword weakens my Zanpakuto, so it's not much more than a normal sword, Ichigo stated. His Bankai isn't affected and obviously shoots fireballs along with a stream of fire from the back. The blade heats up when he uses it. When he charges an attack, flames will start to come out of the back, and if he drives it into the ground, pillars of flame will shoot out around you and trap you before burning you to death. Got it, Naruto nodded before sprinting forward. Amagai snorted in amusement and extended his Bakudo's blade, slashing at Naruto, who vanished in a puff of smoke as the real Naruto leapt up behind him, slashing at his neck. Amagai ducked under it, then spun, slashing at Naruto with his Bankai. Naruto blocked the slash, then spun past him and slashed at his back. Amagai blocked the slash with his Bakudo, then kicked Naruto back and turned toward him, glaring. Alright Naruto, Amagai growled. Let's see you dance. Amagai gripped his Bankai with both hands and began spinning it over his head, the blade launching fireballs in rapid succession. They were all extremely well aimed and shot at Naruto in bright orangish streaks. Naruto dove out of the way of 2 1/3 shot toward him as he stood. He slashed it instinctively and the sword blocked it as it had when Ichigo slashed one. Amagai growled in frustration, spinning his sword even faster, and the fireballs sped up. Naruto began having to dodge around them at the same time as slashing others away. Within minutes, one slipped past his defenses and exploded. Amagai continued to blast the spot for several minutes while most of the newly assembled village stared in shocked horror. However, as the smoke began to clear, Naruto was gone. Blown to bits, Amagai growled. You wish, Naruto spoke, appearing behind Amagai and slashing at his throat. Amagai blocked the blade, then leapt away from it and glared at Naruto, turning his Bankai over so the blade was to the ground. Naruto suddenly hurled himself backward as flames shot out of the ground in a spire. Within seconds, he was surrounded and more began shooting up around him inside the first ring. After a minute, Naruto leapt into the air as another shot up under him. As it neared him, however, a familiar Hyuga appeared below him, lion head-shaped shrouds of chakra around her hands as she fell toward the flames. Naruto looked where she had come and saw a gap, but it was instantly filled with flame. Naruto looked down as Hinata reached the flames and swung, and blasted her way to the ground. Then blasted that and exposed a massive crater of flame which exploded into the sky and launched Amagai away. Amagai landed on his feet and blinked in surprise as Hinata stood, unscathed, as Naruto landed beside her, smiling at her for a moment before turning back to Amagai. "Great," Amagai growled. "Another stupid bitch bent on busting my everything. Joy, I'd stick around, but I think I'll give you all a beeping break today. See you around, Ichigo." Amagai charged a massive amount of power into his Bankai and drove it into the ground again. This time, the columns of flame were much larger and faster. They were aimed over a massive area to block anyone chasing him, however, and were unable to actually wound anyone beyond a few burns. When it cleared, Naruto sighed and looked around. Hinata had a small burn on her shoulder, but she didn't look to be hurt. "You okay?" Naruto asked, glancing at the burn. "Just my sweatshirt," Hinata stated. "Are you?" "Fine," Naruto nodded. "Ichigo, I'll live," Ichigo grunted as Lisa set him down. "You did well. If my Zanpakuto had been at full power, you'd have been able to do a lot more damage per swing. Unfortunately, if my Zanpakuto was at full power, you wouldn't have been needed." "No doubt," Naruto grinned. "You'd have killed him for sure, assuming he didn't kill you first." "At full power I can move much faster than you," Ichigo stated. "I could race circles around you. Not while trying to fight, of course. It is more a defensive tactic than anything for me. While fighting I'd still be fast enough to kill him." Naruto rolled his eyes, remembering their own battle, but chose to ignore the fact that Naruto had been more than able to keep up. For the time being, it looked like they would continue training. They all needed it. Taken, Ichigo leaned back against the tree as Naruto talked to Tsunade and Kakashi a little longer before turning to Ichigo and shrugging. "Well?" Ichigo questioned. "Hinamori, Hitsugaya, Shunsui, and Yukataki are staying," Naruto stated. "Haribel and Lisa are coming, as is Gaara, the leader of one of our ally villages. You sure you want to leave to find others?" "Yes," Ichigo nodded. "There's at least one other and we need to find him. He'd be a powerful addition to our side." "I see," Naruto nodded. "Well, I suppose I can't refuse, can I? Let's get this over with." Ichigo nodded as the others joined them and they all left. After about 3 days, they reached the Hidden Sound village. Naruto had convinced Ichigo to let them stop there in case Sasuke was there, since Sasuke might care about the new arrivals as they needed help and were strong enough to rival Sasuke. Given Naruto's description of Sasuke's past, Ichigo was less than convinced of the same. "Why should we trust him if he's tried to kill just about everyone you say he should care about?" Ichigo questioned. "He'll help," Naruto promised. "What do you want, Naruto?" A cold and annoyed voice questioned from above. "Hey Sasuke." Naruto smiled. "Glad I found you. We need help killing Madara." "No," Sasuke said flatly. "What?" Naruto blinked. "Why?" "I have no interest in fighting Madara," Sasuke shrugged. "But Ichigo and his friends need to find a way home," Naruto stated. "Another dimension," Sasuke guessed. "Beeps to be you. You can't force him to send you back, and he won't." "Please," Naruto begged. "No," Sasuke said flatly before vanishing. "Waste of time," Ichigo sighed. "Can we go now? Why don't you just raise your whatever level to get his attention?" Naruto questioned. "God only knows what else that would attract," Ichigo pointed out. "Grimmjow and Amagai to start with. Then Hollows, Madara, who knows?" Naruto nodded and sighed as they continued to walk. After several minutes, however, they stopped when Ichigo sensed spiritual energy somewhere nearby. They followed him toward it and came out into a clearing where a tall blue man with gills below his eyes and blue hair was standing with a sword wrapped in bandages on his shoulder, and a second man was standing off to one side as thousands of what seemed to be Japanese cherry blossom petals swarmed around several hidden sand ninja. Among them Naruto and Gaara recognized Matsuri and Temari. Byakuya! Ichigo shouted, and the petals all stopped attacking, flying back to Byakuya as he turned toward Ichigo and the others. Glad he didn't kill you. We need your help. Sorry, Byakuya spoke, emotionless as ever. I have made an agreement with him. I helped his cause, I go home. You would be wise to choose a side more carefully. His sword fragments shot toward the sand ninja again but were blocked by a wall of sand extending from Gaara's gourd. You will not touch them, Gaara growled. Sand, Byakuya mused, raising an eyebrow. Similar in function to my own Senbon Sakura. Which means you would have a similar fighting style. Interesting. Shall we see who is the better of us? Gaara nodded and retracted his sand as Byakuya did the same with his sword fragments, both forming a ring around themselves before launching their first attack in a massive blast. Gaara folded his arms as Byakuya stood motionless watching the battle by moving his eyes only. Gaara and Byakuya's attacks blasted against each other, both trying to get past the other, but Byakuya was able to deflect Gaara's sand while Gaara's sand was shifting too quickly for him to break through. After a couple of minutes of them blasting against each other's defenses, sand shot up from below Byakuya. He leapt into the air, blade fragments shooting under him and blocking the sand before he landed a distance away, watching Gaara carefully. I was right, Gaara noted. There is a space around you that your blades cannot enter. I have no such space. That will be your downfall. Gaara uncrossed his arms, holding his right over his head as he took a ready stance with his left ahead of the right. Sand gathered in his hand, forming a spear which he instantly hurled. Byakuya sent the entirety of his blade shards swarm against the spear, but it burst out the other side, little more than a pointed stick but moving more than fast enough to kill Byakuya. Byakuya turned sideways, the spear sailing past as he raised his right arm, palm flexed before his blade shards crashed down on Gaara. Gaara-sensei! Matsuri shouted. The shards suddenly shot off of Gaara, scattering then reforming around Byakuya as Gaara, now surrounded by a spinning dome of sand, raised an arm of his own, sand exploding up from around Byakuya in a massive spinning ring that closed into a dome before shrinking toward Byakuya, more and more sand joining it. I will not allow you to hurt my friends, Gaara growled, his own dome uncovering him. Die. Before he could kill Byakuya, the blade shards broke through the top center of the dome and Byakuya leapt out, landing a safe distance away and glaring at Gaara. Kisame, a hand would be nice, Byakuya growled. Kisame, the blue fish man, began to clap until Byakuya glared at him before he sided and drew his sword. Ichigo drew his shikai and stepped between Kisame and Gaara, and Kisame laughed. All right kid, Kisame chuckled, I'll take you first. Ichigo charged, slashing at Kisami's left side, and he blocked it, holding his massive sword with one hand, allowing his another hand with which to grab Ichigo by the top of the head as he smashed Ichigo's Zanpakuto away before raising the sword. Sorry kid, Kisame sneered. You lose. Before he could slash, Lisa appeared to one side, Harabel the other, and Naruto behind him. The two Shinigami slashed at him with their Zanpakuto and Naruto slashed at him with a Konoha chakra blade he had gotten before they left. Kisame leapt forward, smashing Ichigo into the ground, then leaping away and kicking Ichigo's Zanpakuto back to him when he landed. Thank you. Ichigo sighed, holding his shikai in front of himself. I'll handle it from here. Bankai. Spiritual energy shot up around him before fading, and he held his Bankai at his side as Kisame stared at the new blade in surprise. Neat trick, Kisame smirked. Normally I would say a tiny sword like that couldn't hurt me, but I get the feeling it's far from just some toy. Ichigo grinned and appeared behind Kisame, holding his Bankai to Kisami's throat, and Kisame laughed, dropping his sword and holding his hands up. Impressive, Kisame laughed. I have an answer for it though. What's THAAAGGGHHH? He was cut off mid-sentence when Kisami's sword came to life, breaking out of its wrappings and growing a mouth on the tip which instantly sunk its teeth into most of Ichigo's right leg. Ichigo slashed at it, but it leapt away before he could hit it, and Kisame caught it, spinning and slashing at Ichigo. Ichigo blocked it, but Kisami's sword slid along his, the sword's now exposed scales, making it feel like Ichigo was trying to block a jackhammer. Finally Ichigo's sword was launched by it and Kisame swung his sword up then slashed vertically at Ichigo. Lisa stepped between them, shoving him away as the sword tore a path down her back, shredding her flesh and likely a lot of the inside of her back. Lisa landed in a bloody heap in front of Kisame, who smirked at Ichigo as Naruto kicked his Bankai back to him. As it flew through the air, pitch-black spiritual energy exploded up from Ichigo's feet and Haribel turned to flee as Naruto grabbed Lisa and followed. Byakuya and Gaara also stopped fighting to flee, both taking the hint from the others as Kisame watched. By the time Ichigo's sword reached the column of black energy, it ended, vanishing in the blink of an eye as Ichigo's full hollow form caught the Bankai then roared, the force sending out a shockwave that launched Kisame. Kisame landed on his feet and sprinted forward to attack Zangetsu. As he slashed, however, Zangetsu was suddenly behind him, slashing his own sword. Kisame fell away into a puddle of water and another appeared behind Zangetsu, slashing horizontally. The blade sparked and hissed as it ground across Zangetsu's back, shredding his robe's upper half. Zangetsu spun, his sword carving a deep gash across Kisame's chest. Kisame stumbled back, blood spraying out of his wound and his sword coming alive and leaping at Zangetsu. Before it got to him, he leaned forward, a sarrow forming between his horns before blasting the sword into ashes and Kisame along with it. Just as Zangetsu stood up, roaring again, Madara appeared behind him, grabbing Zangetsu's face and pulling. After less than a second, the mask pulled free and the rest of Zangetsu's body fell away, leaving Ichigo in his ruined robe and unconscious. Naruto and Haribel got back to the clearing at the same time as Gaara and Byakuya, all of them arriving just in time to see Madara hold the mask up to look at it, exposing the black spiritual energy that was Zangetsu inside of it, before his body and the mask spiraled into a vortex around his exposed eye. Then, he was gone. Delayed Ichigo groaned, opening his eyes and looking around. Lisa was to his right and Tsunade was healing broken ribs he didn't even know how he got. Hold still, Tsunade commanded when Ichigo tried to sit up, I'm almost done. After another moment, she sighed, finishing and walked out of the room. Ichigo pushed himself up and put a hand to his head. What happened? Ichigo groaned. I don't know, Lisa admitted. I was unconscious after Kisame hit me. That's about the last thing I remember too, Ichigo stated. I remember being angry though. There wasn't much destruction but apparently you killed Kisame, Lisa stated. I don't think you shifted fully but your hollow definitely took control. Ichigo nodded and glanced at her. Thank you, Ichigo sighed, for saving me from Kisame's attack. Lisa smiled and nodded just before the door slammed open and Naruto strolled in, grinning from ear to ear. An exasperated Hitsugaya and Haribel both followed. What are you grinning at? Ichigo questioned. I beat Hitsugaya in a duel, Naruto said, grin spreading. Sealed state? Ichigo guessed and Hitsugaya nodded. Go show him your Bankai. Hitsugaya sighed and shook his head. Later I will, Hitsugaya stated. For now, we need to talk about your trip out of the village. Yeah, about that, Ichigo nodded. Haribel, Naruto, what happened after Lisa got hit? You had an episode, Naruto stated. Full form. You killed Kisame easily but then Madara showed up and, well. Well what? Ichigo asked unsure he wanted to hear it. He removed the mask and took you hollow half and abilities Sith it, Haribel stated. He what? Ichigo gasped, mouth hanging open. You've got to be shitting me, how? He just appeared, grabbed the mask, took it off, and you blacked out, Naruto shrugged. Beep. Ichigo spat wishing he had something to punch. Well then. How the hell am I supposed to protect this place? I can't Grimmjow or Amagai without my hollow powers. You'll have to, Naruto stated. By the way, Byakuya joined up with us after all and Gaara moved his village here for the extra defense. And the hidden cloud village sent their tailed beast to pick me up so I can leave to train and control the demon inside me. Great, Ichigo sighed. Hurry back. I don't fancy having to fight them without you here. Naruto nodded and left, the others following, leaving Ichigo and Lisa alone. Ichigo was glad his robe had repaired itself because it meant no one had had to put him in a new one. He was really glad Shinigami never had to worry about that. He didn't think. He stood and his legs threatened to give out, Lisa catching him and helping him walk out of the room. As he stepped out of the door, a familiar voice rang out. Ichigo Kurosaki. The voice shouted and Ichigo instinctively stumbled backward, hitting the wall and staying there. Not him, Ichigo breathed. Not now. Less than a second later, Kenpachi stepped around a building and pointed his Zanpakuto at Ichigo. I want my rematch, Kenpachi demanded. But, I don't want to fight you, Ichigo complained. Can't you just let it go? No. Kenpachi snorted, charging. Ichigo drew his Shikai and blocked the slash before shoving Kenpachi's sword away and promptly sprinting in the other direction. Kenpachi growled in annoyance and followed, and Ichigo wound his way through several alleyways before stopping long enough to enter his Bankai form. Then, he spun and knocked a stab away before kicking Kenpachi and shooting away from him as Kenpachi stood completely still. Beep, that hurt. Ichigo complained as he sprinted through the alleyways away from Kenpachi. As he stepped out into the main street again, Kenpachi stepped out opposite him. God damn it, Ichigo growled. Can't you leave me alone? No, Kenpachi shrugged. Shall we? Ichigo groaned and sprinted sideways, Kenpachi keeping step with him perfectly. Finally they left the village, the other Shinigami following now that Lisa had told them what was going on, and stopped in a clearing. If I win, you have to agree to never attack me again, Ichigo spoke up. Deal. Kenpachi nodded. Ichigo sighed and sprinted forward, slashing at Kenpachi, who easily blocked it. Kenpachi kicked Ichigo backward and Ichigo flipped, landing on his feet before darting forward again, firing a Getsuga Tensho at Kenpachi. Kenpachi held a hand out, blocking the blast before catching Ichigo's Bankai. Ichigo yanked it back, the blade sparking against Kenpachi's skin for a moment before Ichigo stepped forward, driving it into Kenpachi's chest. The blade stopped the moment the tip made contact and blood began to leak out of Ichigo's palms as the handle gave him rope burn. He stumbled back, Kenpachi raising an eyebrow, and Ichigo groaned. You beat me with your Shikai before, Kenpachi stated. I have yet to attack aside from a kick and you're already losing. This is boring. Put that mask of yours on so you can fight me at full power. I can't, Ichigo groaned, holding a hand to his throbbing head. My hollow powers were stolen by the man in the mask, Madara, yesterday, I think. I don't have hollow powers and I'm still weak from turning into a full hollow just before that. Well, that's no fun, Kenpachi huffed. Fine. I'll let you rest for now. When you've recovered, we're fighting again. Until then, I won't be saying I beat you because you were tired before we fought. Thank you, I think, Ichigo blinked. Don't suppose you'll help protect the village from Amagai and Grimmjow? Why not? Kenpachi shrugged. They'd be more entertaining to fight than this. But what about the other hollow? The bitch with the sword for an arm. She's on our side, Ichigo stated. She decided to help us when Grimmjow tried to kill her. If you say so, Kenpachi shrugged. Just hurry up and get your strength back. Ichigo sighed and they went back to the village, meeting the other captains on the way who were all confused that, aside from Ichigo's hands, neither had any injuries. Arankar Ichigo held his Shikai up, hands shaking slightly, and Haribel sighed, looking to Lisa. Your Shikai's too heavy for you, Ichigo, Haribel stated. Use your Bankai or Lisa's Zanpakuto. I'll be fine, Ichigo growled. Haribel sprinted forward, drawing her sword from its sheath on her back and slashed at Ichigo. He moved to block it, but she easily smashed his Shikai away, Ichigo unable to keep a grip on it. Shit, Ichigo growled before walking over to it and holding it toward Haribel. Bankai. When the spiritual energy left, leaving Ichigo in his Bankai, Ichigo looked at the sword before sighing. What now? Haribel questioned. I'm tired just from switching to Bankai, Ichigo sighed. I doubt I'll be able to fight you for long. Haribel sighed but nodded and put her sword away. You're pretty much useless, aren't you? Haribel questioned. How did you get your energy back before? Not sure, Ichigo shrugged. I just did. Maybe you should try going to see your Zanpakuto spirit, Haribel suggested. I suppose, Ichigo nodded. What other choice do I have? He sat down and set his Bankai beside him on the grass. Then, he closed his eyes and entered his inner world. Instead of standing on the side of a building like he was when he fought his inner hollow, this time, he was standing in what he looked like a Greek pantheon. The roof was supported on pillars, but that was all that was present. The building was hollow, aside from the man standing in the center. The square-tiled floor made something of a sparring ring which Ichigo supposed it soon would be. Zangetsu, Ichigo growled. Why am I so weak still? I should be back to full power. You were weak, because you lost half of your power, Zangetsu stated. We were even when he was taken. Don't worry, your power will be back by tomorrow. I need the strength now, Ichigo stated. Sorry, Zangetsu shrugged. You'll have to be patient. Ichigo growled in frustration, drawing his Shikai and sprinting forward. Please. Zangetsu snorted, drawing his own and blocking Ichigo's swing with ease before gripping the blade and twisting, making Ichigo let go. Don't act like you're a match for me without your strength. Zangetsu kicked Ichigo back and threw the sword into the ground at his feet. Leave, Zangetsu ordered. You'll have your power back soon. Ichigo glared at him for a moment before sighing and returning to the real world. Well, Lisa spoke up. What gives? I'll have it back by tomorrow, Ichigo sighed. My hollow side took half my power with him. We may not have that long, Harabelle growled, looking behind herself, toward the village. Grimmjow's back. Shit, Ichigo growled. Let's go. They all sprinted back to the village, arriving just in time for Ichigo to smash Grimmjow away from Hinamori with a two-footed jump kick. Hinamori thanked him, backing up to stand beside Hitsugaya, who had been wounded in a surprise attack and was being healed by Tsunade. Kenpachi was just arriving and Naruto was off to one side with claw wounds on his left side. Assholes fast, Naruto growled. Caught us off guard. If not for Hinamori, I'd probably be no better off than Hitsugaya. Kenpachi, Ichigo growled. You want him? No, Kenpachi grinned. Let's have the Arankar fight him. She can prove her loyalty. Harabelle nodded and leapt off the wall, slashing at Grimmjow, who ducked under the blade and backed away as Harabelle entered her Resurrection form. He charged and she slashed at him. He spun, flipping over the blade before planting both feet in her face, blasting her backward into the village's wall. She leapt at him again, slashing vertically at him, and he turned sideways, the blade flashing past before he slashed at her. She blocked it and shoved him back, lunging and driving the blade at him, but he jumped off the air, somersaulting over her before smashing both fists into her back and blasting her into the ground. She began to stand just in time for Grimmjow to crash down on her back. You know the funny thing about the people of this world? Grimmjow practically purred. They're just full of power, ripe to be beeped out just like spirit energy. Only much more potent. Observe. He began to charge Asero, holding it over Harabelle's head and grinning. I'm beyond you now, Grimmjow grinned. Getsuga Tensho, Ichigo shouted, swinging his Shikai and blasting Grimmjow off of Harabelle but not harming him in the least, only stopping his Sero. Really? Grimmjow said flatly. Shikai and no mask? That's just insulting? Sorry, Ichigo growled. You're not worth my mask, or even my Bankai. Kenpachi, feel free to come have some fun with him. Just leave the village standing. You don't think I'm worth your Bankai, huh? Grimmjow grinned, pricking his right palms with his claws. Fine. Try this. He raised both arms, charging a Gran Rei Sero in each hand. Gran Rei. He was cut off by Kenpachi landing in front of him and bringing his Zanpakuto down across Grimmjow's chest. Grimmjow staggered back, the Seros fading as blood sprayed out of his wound. You bastard, Grimmjow growled. Fine, let's try this one. He raised his right hand, claws glowing before slashing and firing his ultimate attack at Kenpachi. When it reached Kenpachi, he blocked one and the two to either side of it tore through his shoulders. He stumbled back as Grimmjow raised his hand again. Again, Grimmjow growled. He fired and Kenpachi dove to the side, one claw catching his eye patch, just barely scratching him, and removed it. Instantly spiritual energy began to explode skyward around him and he grinned. Big mistake, Kenpachi laughed. Now you die. Grimmjow fired again at Kenpachi and Kenpachi slashed horizontally, shattering all 5 blasts. Then, he stepped forward, slashing at Grimmjow and sending a blast wave at him. Grimmjow leapt into the air and began to charge a Gran Rei Sero again. This time, he fired it at Ichigo. Ichigo turned and leapt away, the blast exploding and launching him away. Kenpachi jumped, appearing behind Grimmjow and slashing him across the back, blood spraying over Kenpachi and staining his haori. Grimmjow flew away from Kenpachi, who looked bored. You're weak after all, Kenpachi sighed. Weak? Grimjow growled. I'll show you weak. He curled his hands into fists, blood pouring out between his fingers instantly before streams of blue energy began to shoot off of his body, creating a strong wind that blew everything and everyone around. Kenpachi was the only exception, simply hovering in place and holding one hand over his eyes to block the wind. Finally it died down, the streams of energy still rolling off of Grimjow as his body steamed. Now, shall we try this again? Grimjow growled. He appeared behind Kenpachi, blood spraying out of him, and Grimjow spun, tearing at Kenpachi's back. After a moment, Kenpachi spun, driving his elbow into Grimjow's face, blasting him away. Grimjow stopped, holding his arms with his elbows back before firing 6 small blue spikes out of each forearm at Kenpachi. Kenpachi slashed 2 and the other 10 crashed into his chest, blasting him backward into a tree. Kenpachi slid to the ground, then pushed himself up and spit out blood. Still up, huh? Grimjow snarled. Fine. Let's try this again. He raised his arms, then slashed, the blasts all shining blindingly bright. Kenpachi ducked and dove to the side, barely escaping, then standing just as another 5 spikes crashed into his side. He pushed himself up, breathing heavily now, and looked at Grimjow unhappily. What's the matter, Shinigami? Grimjow growled. Haven't met your match yet, have you? Just as he finished talking, Lisa appeared over him wearing her hollow mask. He looked up just as her Zanpakuto flashed toward his face. He leaned back, the Zanpakuto slicing a shallow cut in his chin. He growled and flew backward, and Lisa readied herself in front of him. A vizard. Grimjow growled. Where the holy beep did they find you? Around, Lisa shrugged. Shall we? No, Grimjow growled, appearing behind her, claw slashes appearing on both sides of her stomach and across the top of her chest. Blood sprayed out of all of her wounds, her mask shattering, and Grimjow licked the blood off of his claws. You know, half hollow or not, Shinigami still tastes pretty good, Grimjow grinned. Lisa trembled for a moment before falling. Ichigo caught her and retreated back to the wall. He turned back just as Kenpachi appeared behind Grimjow, slashing him vertically down the back just as 10 spikes shot out of Grimjow's arms, blasting Kenpachi in the stomach. Both fell, crashing down hard and remaining still. After a moment, Grimjow stood and turned toward Kenpachi, extending an arm. Now die, Shinigami, Grimjow growled. He began to charge a Gran Racero, but before he could fire, a wave of bright yellow energy blasted him, more than covering him, and a second later, it cleared, leaving him with a massive burn to most of his body and pieces of his body missing, including both arms. You bitch! Grimjow shouted, spinning to face her. You brought this on yourself, Haribel stated, floating up to hover in front of him. You listen to me, you little slut, Grimjow growled. I'll kill you. I'll beeping come back and kill you. No, Haribel stated, raising her sword. You won't. Her sword began to glow yellow before she slashed and the spirit energy shot off, severing Grimjow in half the long way. Both halves fell and Haribel landed beside Kenpachi. Are you okay? Haribel questioned. I'll be fine, Kenpachi growled. But you stole my kill. That means you'll make up for it. Kenpachi, Ichigo growled, landing behind him. You may be more powerful than me right now, but once I have my powers back, if you try to hurt any one of our friends, you'll die. Kenpachi laughed, pushing himself up, then looked around. When we get back then, Kenpachi smirked. He retrieved his eye patch, putting it back on before limping toward the village. Thank you, Haribel said, turning to Ichigo. You're welcome, Ichigo nodded. Come on. Better get back into the village before Amagai decides to join the party. Haribel nodded and the two of them turned and flew into the village, Ichigo spotting Hitsugaya and Hinamori off to one side of the gate, guarding the gate while Yukitaki and Shunsui trained the ninja. To be continued, and thank you for watching.